The Garblin's been swinging a hot bat of late, 7 for his last 15. Here's the 2-1. Deep to left. That ball is gone. The crowd loves it. I've never heard this much generic Goblin noise.
Hey gang, and welcome back. Just so you know, you can use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, one word, at flipsidegaming.com to get 10% off orders $10 or more. You can also use the promo code at Original Magic Art on everything except for paintings. And finally, you can use the code at mtg.multizone.ca to get 10% off of your orders of singles. Using the code will help you save some money and help out the channel at the same time. Just to let you know, Flipside Gaming is going to be giving away a full set of Commander 2019 when it releases to one lucky winner. The contest will be running from July 12th until August 26th, and all you have to do to enter is either use my promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, no spaces, on an order of over $10 or more, or you can send a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to Flipside Gaming. It's one entry per person, so good luck, have fun, and I hope you win. Welcome back to my lovely viewers. We've got another Multizone matchup today with a brand new player. And Erik has brought his Edgar Markov deck, keeping a Nykthos, a Clifftop Retreat, a Blood Crypt, Demonic Tutor, Stromkirk Captain, Aggravated Assault, and World at War. I'm back with the Duke of Dumpsters, Daretti, keeping an Unwinding Clock, an Ancient Tomb, a Buried Ruin, a Command Beacon, 2 Mountains, and a Goblin Engineer. Max is back with his Bruse and Ikra deck, keeping Evolving Wilds, Stomping Grounds, Temple Garden, Dragonlord Jamoka, Play of the Game, Lotus Cobra, and Rampant Growth. Last but not least is Seb playing Emmara, keeping a Forest, Kadama's Reach, Path of Discovery, Nature's Chosen, Sylvan Library, and Serra Ascendant. Seb wins the die roll and starts us off. Seb draws and lucks out, playing an untapped Temple Garden and losing 2 life. He's not worried about the life loss though, as he plays that sweet turn 1 Serra Ascendant. Max plays an Evolving Wilds, cracking it and passing. I play a Mountain and pass. Erik plays a tapped Blood Crypt, passing. Seb plays a Forest and casts Emmara. Heading to combat, he rolls for who'll get hit first, and Max falls victim to the Serra Ascendant, losing 6 while Seb gains 6. Max plays a Spire Garden, which comes in untapped, and he casts a Lotus Cobra before passing. I play a Mountain for turn, and cast the newly printed Goblin Engineer. I go and find an artifact from my yard, bending the Spine of Ishsa, and passing to Erik. Erik plays a Bloodstained Mire, cracking it and losing 1 life to find a land as he passes. Seb pays 1 in his main phase for Nature's Chosen, enchanting his Emmara. He heads to combat, and he hits me for 8 with his team, and gains 6 life. He also gains a Soldier token with lifelink from tapping Emmara to attack. Seb then uses his Aura's ability to untap Emmara, and then taps Emmara to use the Aura's second ability, untapping a Forest. He then uses all of his mana to drop a Sylvan Library, and remembers to gain another Soldier token before passing to Max. Max plays a Windswept Heath, gaining 1 white mana with the Cobra. He cracks the fetch to find a Godless Shrine, losing 2 from it coming in untapped, and making another mana with the Cobra. Max then pays all of his mana to cast Ikra before heading to combat. He hits Erik for 2 with the Cobra, and with the Cobra connecting, gains 1 life from the Cobra's toughness thanks to Ikra. I draw for turn, playing an Ancient Tomb. I then lose 2 life to tap out, casting Nevernjal's Disc, and pass turn. Erik plays a land, and casts Stromkirk Captain. This triggers Edgar Markov's Eminence ability, giving Erik a Vampire token before the Lord enters, and Erik passes. Seb uses his Library trigger, and takes the 8 to keep the extra cards. He looks like he doesn't find a land though. Heading to combat, he swings everything but 1 soldier at me and a soldier at Max. I take most of it, blocking a soldier with my Goblin Engineer, and Max takes the 1 as well, with Seb gaining 8. Seb then taps his lands, and untaps Emmara, and then retaps her to untap a land. He gains a soldier token from this, and casts Kadama's Reach to find a land for the field and 1 for his hand. Seb then plays a Plains from his hand, and passes. Max plays a tapped Stomping Ground, gaining a green with his Lotus Cobra. He uses the floating mana and taps a land for Rampant Growth to find a snow-covered plains. He floats another green with a Cobra as it enters. Heading to combat, Ikra heads at Seb, who has to block due to Menace with both of his soldiers. Even though they die to Ikra, they still give Seb 2 more life. I draw for turn and play a command beacon. I then take another 2 for Daretti being cast with the Ancient Tomb, and I uptick my Walker, discarding 2 cards to draw 2, and I pass to Erik. Erik plays a Plains and casts Demonic Tutor. He finds a card he wants and puts it to hand, not wanting to play anything else out into the disc. Heading to combat, Erik swings the Captain and the Vampire at Seb for 4. Erik then passes, to which I respond to by activating my disc to destroy most of the board. With most of his board gone, Seb pays for Miri in his main phase, and Erik wants to double check what she does. Seb then passes. Max drops a Swamp for turn, and taps out for Dragonlord Jamoka, passing. I play a Buried Ruin, and pay 2 for Tormenting Voice. I discard a Wormcoil Engine, and draw 2. I then pay 2 more for a Thought Vessel, and uptick Daretti, pitching 2 to draw 2. Erik plays a Nykthos for his land drop, and pays 4 to cast Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord. He downticks his Walker for 3 to bring back the Stromkirk Captain, and passes to Seb. Seb pays 4 again to recast Emmara in his main phase, and he heads to combat. He hits Daretti for 3 with Miri, and passes to Max. Max plays a Tap Temple Guard in his main phase, before bringing in Bruse. His other commander enters, giving Jamoka double strike and lifelink, which he swings at Seb for 10, gaining 10 life, and Max passes. I play another Mountain for turn, and go through my yard briefly. I pay 2 for Grim Monolith, and uptick Daretti, discarding 1 and drawing 1. That card happens to be a Silent Arbiter, which I'm happy to cast, and I pass to Erik. Erik casts Land Tax in his main phase, and then a Captivating Vampire, gaining a Vampire token from Edgar Markov's Eminence trigger. He upticks Sorin, dealing 1 to Daretti and gaining 1 life. Heading to combat, the Captain heads towards Seb, dealing 3 and gaining Erik 3. Seb draws for turn, and pays 4 for a Glare of Subdual in his main phase. He's on the defensive now, and has to pass to Max. Max taps 6 in his main phase for an Austere Command, choosing to blow up all creatures that cost 3 or less, and all enchantments. Erik suggests he reconsider the enchantment choice to artifacts, but Max doesn't want to be on the receiving end of the Glare moving forward. With the spell in the stack, Seb taps Emmara to the Glare, tapping Jamoka, and gains a Soldier token who's not long for this world. He also taps Miri to tap Bruse, and then using the Soldier, taps my Silent Arbiter. Unable to attack, Max passes. I pay 1 red for a Goblin Welder before upticking Daretti again and discarding 1 and drawing 1. 6 mana is then tapped, with my taking 2 from the tomb to pay for a Combustible Gearhulk. I give Max the choice of letting me draw cards or milling those cards and him taking the damage, and Max decides to let me draw 3. Erik upticks Sorin again to deal 1 to Daretti, and gains 1 life. He then pays 3 for an Aggravated Assault with sadly no creatures, and passes. Seb casts Harmonize, digging for that land. He doesn't find it, and has to discard 3 cards before passing. Max plays a Blood Crypt untapped, and loses 2. He follows Erik's lead by dropping Aggravated Assault of his own, but sadly it's not as nice as Erik's because it isn't foil. He heads to combat, and swings Jamoka at Daretti for 5, and gains 5. Max then realizes he tapped his mana wrong, and the table has no problem with him fixing it so he can activate the assault. He gains another combat step, and hits Sorin this time for 5, gaining another 5. I play a Mountain for turn, and uptick Daretti. I discard Anger and a Basalt Monolith before drawing 2. I then lose another 2 life to pay for Karn, and downtick the Walker to exile Max Jamoka. Heading to combat, my Combustible Gearhulk then heads at Max, who takes the hit for 6. In my second main phase, I drop a Topra Orb and pass. Erik asks to see the yards in his main phase, and goes through them. He then taps 6 for Command the Dreadhorde, bringing back his Sorin, his Stromkirk Captain, the Captivating Vampire, the Serra Ascendant, Miri, the Wormcoil Engine, the Goblin Engineer, and my Chandra Flamecaller. He takes a grand total of 28 points of damage from this, and regrettably doesn't get an Enter the Battlefield trigger from the Engineer because of the Topra Orb. Erik then upticks Sorin to deal 1 to Daretti and gains 1 life. He then upticks Chandra, making 2 hasty elemental tokens. He swings only one of them at Max because of the Silent Arbiter. Max takes the hit, and Erik gains 3, and Erik then passes. Seb casts a Soul Ring in his main phase, and then completely disrespectful to Erik, casts his own land tax. We then see Seb casting Growing Rites of Itlamok, and he regrettably whiffs, bottoming the cards. Before passing though, Seb has one more play, and he casts a Birds of Paradise. Max plays a Sun Petal Grove, tapping 8 for a play of the game. With the spell in the stack, I tap my Welder to sacrifice my Combustible Gear Hulk and bring back my Spine of Ishsa. The Spine comes in and blows up Max's untapped land, and we then exile the board. I draw and take 2 to cast Chandra, Torch of Defiance. I uptick her once she resolves to make 2 red, and tap the rest of my mana for a Planar Bridge before passing to Erik. Erik casts Legion's Landing and makes a Vampire token as it enters. He then pays to bring out Edgar Markov and heads to combat. He swings his commander at Max, putting a +1/+1 counter onto each of his vampires. Max then takes the hit for 4, and Erik passes. Seb draws, and finally finds that 5th land. He plays a Sun Petal Grove, and taps out for Mirari's Wake. Max plays a tapped Overgrown Tomb, and casts a Resplendent Angel in his main phase. He follows up with Ilharg, the Raised Boar, and passes to me. I play an Inkmoth Nexus as my land for turn, and uptick Chandra, exiling a Phyrexia's Core, and not using it, so I deal 2 to all of my opponents. I then pass to Erik. Erik plays a land, and swings both of his creatures at Max. He gets to put another counter on all of his vampires as Edgar swings, and Max puts Ilharg in front of Edgar Markov. The Boar God dies, and Max decides to put it 3rd from the top with Ilharg's on death trigger. Max then takes 3 from normal damage dealt by the lifelinking vampire token, and Erik gains 3. Erik realizes in his post-combat main phase because of the wording, he should have cast World at War in his first main phase, and since we're all pretty casual about it, we let him cast it under the assumption he would have done so earlier if he'd read the card. He gets another combat step, and Erik swings Edgar and the token at Max again, giving them another +1/+1 counter. Max takes the full hit for 11, and Erik gains 4 life from the token. Seb casts Path to Discovery in his main phase, and then recasts Emmara. She enters, and the path trigger reveals Tristani, Discordant, which he leaves on top, and gives his commander a +1/+1 counter. Max plays a Swamp, and brings back Bruse Tarl. He gives the Angel Double Strike and Lifelink. But before letting him move to the combat step, Erik uses Go for the Throat, taking 2 from his Ancient Tomb to cast it, and takes the Angel out. Max then passes, and at the end of turn, I activate my Planar Bridge, also losing 2 life from my Ancient Tomb. Twinsies. I find a Mindslaver, putting it to the field. I draw and play a Mountain. I uptick Chandra for 2 red, and tap 3 lands to help pay for Alhamrad's Archive. I then lose 2 life to activate the Mindslaver because of my Tomb, and I opt to take Erik's next turn because I'm pretty sure I'm dead if Erik gets to untap. I then pass to Erik, or should I say myself. We rebound Erik's World at War in his upkeep, and I look at Erik's hand and promise him that I won't mess with his stuff too much. I head to combat for turn, and swing his board at Max again, pumping his vampires by +1/+1. Max declares no blocks, and takes 8 from Markov and 5 from the token, with Erik gaining 5. I then untap his creatures again, moving to the main phase and then a combat step again. I go at Max again, giving Edgar Markov's board another +1/+1 counter. Max blocks Edgar Markov with Bruse Tarl and takes 6 from the token, dropping to 1 with Erik gaining another 6. I then tap out for Erik, having him take 2 from his tomb. Seb draws and casts Tristani Discordant, which we'd seen. He gets 2 tokens and 3 path triggers, binning 2 cards before revealing a land which he puts to hand. This gives Tristani and one of the tokens a +1/+1 counter, but not one for the final one. Seb also plays the Forest as land for turn. He decides to spare Max for 1 turn to try and make a deal. Max draws for turn and drops a Wayward Swordtooth. He's got the City's Blessing going for him now, so at least he can block with it. Paying 7, he then brings back Ikra, and he passes to me. For my turn, in my main phase, I use Chandra's ultimate, gaining her emblem. I then sacrifice my command beacon, putting Daretti to my hand, and then recasting my commander, taking 2 from the tomb. I get to deal 5 damage to a target, and I blast Tristani. I then uptick Daretti, and drawing 1, which thanks to my archive has me drawing 2 instead. I then pay 3 for Commander's Sphere, targeting Tristani with the 5 damage again. Responding to the trigger, Seb convokes a Chord of Calling, where X is 7 to go and find a creature. He resolves the Emmara trigger first, gaining a soldier token, who comes in and triggers the path. He reveals and bins Aura Shard in a surprising move, giving his soldier a +1/+1 counter before searching. He settles on Elish Norn, and his Tristani still bites the bullet, but his board is even bigger now. With Elish Norn entering, this also triggers his path, and he reveals Elspeth's Sun's Champion, and he bins her as well. With all of that behind us, I then float a red with the sphere and sacrifice it, drawing not 1 but 2. I then pay 1 colorless for a Mana Vault, and there are enough creatures on the board for a Blasphemous Act for only 1 red. I remember my triggers, dealing 5 to Sed with my Vault on cast, and then 5 to Max to take him out from the Blasphemous Act. The board wipe resolves, and I pass to Erik. Erik plays a Battlefield Forge as his land for turn, and casts Phyrexian Arena, and passes. Seb makes 8 mana from 4 lands to recast Emmara, revealing a Craterhoof Behemoth to his path trigger. Oddly enough, Seb doesn't want to bin it. I realize while he's thinking about it that I'd exiled my Chandra like a fool and put her to my yard instead. Seb then uses Beast Within on my planar bridge, which is probably the right call, and Max is quick to help me out with a Beast token. I draw for turn and uptick Daretti, discarding a card and drawing 2. I then play a Soul Ring, dealing 5 to Erik, and then a Hedron Archive, dealing 5 to Seb. I then crack the Hedron Archive to draw 4. 3 mana is then all it takes for Mirage Mirror, and I deal another 5 to Emmara, and I pass to Erik. Erik loses 1 in his arena, and he casts a Vampire Hexmage. He gains a Vampire token, and Max helps out by pointing out the obvious target on the board for it. Erik then activates Nykthos for more black mana, and he drops a Malakir Blood Witch. He gains an Eminence Trigger token, and the Witch then enters, draining each of Erik's opponents for 4 while he gains 8. Erik then sacrifices the Hexmage to take out Daretti, and passes. Seb recasts Emmara, revealing parallel lives to his path trigger and binning it. He passes. I lose 1 life to my Mana Vault trigger being tapped on my upkeep, and draw for turn. I have my Mirage Mirror become a copy of Mirari's Wake, and paying 8 recast Daretti. I downtick Daretti, swapping the Vault for a Hedron Archive, and then crack it again to draw 4. Max reminds me that I've got an Emblem trigger, and I deal 5 to the Blood Witch. I then decide to go all in, taking 2 and dropping to a dangerously low life total to cast Ugin the Ineffable. I deal 5 to Erik with my cast trigger, and I then drop an Arcbound Ravager for free thanks to Ugin's reduction, dealing 5 more to Erik. Using my 1 floating mana remaining, I then cast Rings of Brighthearth, dealing 5 more to Erik. I still have an activation with Ugin, and I downtick him to blow up Mirari's Wake before passing. Erik loses 1 to his arena and draws from it, and for turn, casting his own Soul Ring, before dropping a Vampire Nighthawk and gaining a Vampire token from Edgar Markov. He knows he won't get past my Beefy Beast and Rip Ravager, so he passes to Seb. Seb casts a Soul Ward in his main phase, revealing a Doubling Season to the path trigger and binning it. He gets to put a +1/+1 counter on the Warden though. Seb then uses Swords to Plowshares on my Beast token, the very Beast token he gave me, in a complete betrayal of our friendship. Oh, and I gain 3 life. He moves to combat, swinging Emmara at me, and I'm happy to block with the Ravager. Seb also gains another Soldier token from tapping Emmara to swing, and he gains 1 life, and he has a path trigger to resolve. This token reveals a Slate of Ancestry, which he keeps on top. Seb then passes, and at the end of turn, while I'm tapped out, Erik uses Teferi's Protection to phase out, taking 2, and using the card I'd promised not to use when I took his turn. I uptick Daretti, discarding 2 lands and drawing 4 cards, 3 of which are lands. I then uptick Ugin to manifest a Spirit token from the top card of my library, and Seb gains a life as it comes in. I then played Tomb of the Spirit Dragon as my land per turn, and then drop Karn the Great Creator, dealing 5 to Seb. I downtick the Karn to return the exiled Chandra Flamecaller to my hand, and then pay the 6 needed to cast Chandra, dealing 5 to Seb. I then resolve Chandra's 0 ability, discarding the 7 cards in my hand and drawing 14. I then cast Metalworker, dealing 5 to Seb, and tap the Metalworker because Anger is in my yard and it gives it haste, and I reveal 7 artifacts making 14 colorless mana. I use some of it to resolve a Staff of Domination, which lets me make infinite colorless mana between it and the Metalworker. I then cast a Mirror Battlesphere, making 4 mirrors. I then use some of that infinite mana to draw with the staff, drawing 2 cards each time. I draw until I hit a Darksteel Forge, and since Chandra's Emblem isn't a May, I have to take out one of my own tokens, blasting a mirror token for 5. I then drop a Mycosynth Lattice, which locks out Erik from tapping mana. I resolve a few more artifacts before finally putting a Contagion engine onto the field, which enters and puts all the counters on Erik's creatures. I then activate the ability, proliferating twice and killing all of Erik's creatures. With his inability to tap for mana, Erik can't do much and concedes the game. Game review time. So this one was about 2 hours before editing, and boy was it a good game. We had a lot of people pulling ahead and having strong presences, and once again, Daretti proved to me why he's my favorite mono-red commander. Sorry, Grinko. You may have noticed actually that once I cast the Darksteel Forge, I stopped mentioning the Chandra's Emblem trigger, and that's because with Erik being not in the game, I had to target my own creatures, and since the Darksteel Forge was on the field, it didn't really matter what creature I targeted as long as it was an artifact one. I think the MVP of this game was easily Alhamrit's Archive in Daretti, and it made such a difference once it resolved. All you have to do is look at this game. At one point I drew 14 cards in mono red with 0 downside. You'll also notice that I used the Karn the Great Creator and the Mycosynth Lattice combo, which is something I don't typically go for early on in the game. It basically leads to a very stalled state, and if everyone else has creatures, I typically die. I think it's pretty okay to finish the game off using it though, so that's what I did. I don't really have much to say about everyone else's decks, other than the fact that I think they all performed quite admirably. I think Seb's deck did a fantastic job, putting an incredible amount of pressure on from the early game, while Max did a great job of stabilizing with board wipes and life gain. And Erik showed once again just how strong Command the Dreadhorde can be. Even though he took 28 points of damage, he ended up with such an enormous board state after the fact that probably would have won the game had Max not board wiped. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.